These are all news stories that have happened to Seattle, Washington in the last week that just show that doom loop is accelerating. Here we go.
Starbucks confirms it's closing 5 Seattle locations in a matter of weeks based on a combination of factors like customer experience and financial performance. Still, the coffee giant insists union status has nothing to do with their closure decision.
Starbucks founder 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗛 announced he and his family have moved to Florida just one day after the millionaire's tax passed the House. 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗛 says the move is part of his retirement, but some Republicans argue this timing is no coincidence. In a post on LinkedIn, 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗛 wrote in part, "It is our hope that Washington will remain a place for business and entrepreneurship to thrive, creating essential opportunity for those in Seattle and the surrounding areas."
State Budget and Policy Center estimates this tax would hit as many as 30,000 households in Washington state. That would bring in roughly $4 billion a year for the general fund. The no votes came from Republicans and 8 Democrats, while supporters of this legislation say this is funding that is really crucial to go towards schools, healthcare, and more.
The House, a lot like me, is not afraid to pick a fight. It's not afraid to throw down, as you have seen for the last 24 hours of uninterrupted Thunderdome.
Under the plan, people making more than $1 million a year would pay a 9.9% tax on income above that threshold starting in 2029. Supporters say it would make the top earners pay their fair share. Opponents believe it could be a slippery slope to a statewide income tax, and they worry it would cause some residents and businesses to leave Washington.
This is not a tax on millionaires. This is a tax on all of us. It's just a matter of when.
But I'm deeply concerned that by changing our traditions and changing our taxes and changing our culture, we are going to chase the next revolution away.
Governor Bob Ferguson, in a statement, called the vote historic to help expand the working families tax credit to 460,000 more homes, and it would fund free breakfast and lunch for all K-12 students. He adds the tax will apply to less than 0.5% of people in the state, but will make life more affordable for millions.
Senate Bill 6346, as amended by the House, is declared passed.
And then we've got this tasty little segment. Here we go.
Empty storefronts and locked up restaurants. You've probably noticed it yourself while walking around downtown Seattle. New reports show downtown's office vacancy rate is nearly the highest in the entire country. Fox News' Dan Griffin talked to neighbors, visitors, and workers who say they want businesses to come back and stay there.
Finding a for lease sign on a business in downtown Seattle isn't tough to do, and new numbers seem to show there's even more space available now than just a few years ago. Another business bids downtown Seattle a fond farewell this year.
It's just a sad thing to say because, like I said, I was born and raised in this city and state, and I've seen all these companies come, not so much going, but now in the last 5 years, they've just been one way out of the city.
Companies are leaving in droves. It's the inevitable result of terrible policy. You've just got one policy after another that's just horrific. The one that I found interesting out of all this was 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗛, job creators to flee Washington state's millionaire tax. That's what everybody's been talking about. And why wouldn't that happen? Clearly, that's exactly what's happening. But you know, when you hear the Democrats speak, they're just so locked into, well, we need the wealthy to pay their fair share, and they're probably going to go to a state that already has an income tax. You heard that guy. You heard that clip. Wrong. Remember when Trump used to do that? Wrong. They're not moving to states with income taxes. They're moving to states that don't have income tax there, numbnuts. It's called Texas. It's called Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas. And even if they do have a small income tax, they don't have all the other taxes. They don't have horrifically expensive gasoline tax. They don't have layers and layers and layers of ridiculous taxes on businesses. They don't have a state tax that's north of 10%. They don't have a buck whatever of gasoline taxes. I mean, you've just got so many taxes and regulations in these big blue states that people are literally moving out of Washington state. They're moving out of California. They're moving out of Oregon. They're moving out of Illinois. They're moving out of New York. Where are they going? Yeah, they're going to Texas. They're going to Florida. They're going to Georgia, the Carolinas, Nevada, Arizona. They're going away from states that have income taxes. That is just reality. And then you hear guys like our, whatever he was, congressperson talking, and you think, oh, yeah, they're just going to go to a place where you've already got an income tax. No, they're not. They're voting with their feet. They're moving on. And this is the migration patterns that we all know are happening in real time. And as a result, that's why you've got 20 million criminal illegals have been let into the country under the Biden administration. You've got this huge population shift. To me, it's astounding that these people have their heads so far up there, what, that they can't see the reality. Have you read a chart on demographics from call it U-Haul? Where are the U-Hauls going from and to? They're not going to states with income taxes. Yeah. Seattle resident 𝗪𝗥𝗘𝗠𝗜𝗨, the founder and longtime face of Starbucks, announced he'll be drinking his vanilla soy latte in Miami from now on. Does Miami have a state income tax? I'm wondering there, numbnuts. No, it doesn't, does it? And this came literally hours after the state of Washington voted in statewide millionaire tax. What could go wrong, right? Washington, Seattle, just loaded with shenanigans. Hey, let's try this. It's going to be great. Progressive taxation. It's like you've got just a bunch of, mentally incapacitated adults that have no concept of how to run a business. They have no concept of how to run a business. They have no concept of economics in general. And they just think that wealthy people and businesses are going to stick around. And they're not. They're leaving in droves. You're watching it happen in real time. And yet these folks are so brain dead. Yeah, we've got Thunderdome happening here. Yeah. And how did it work out in the end of Thunderdome? Yeah. Okay. All right. It's wild to see this happen in real time. Companies have options. Seattle business community reacts to Starbucks Tennessee expansion. Companies have options. That's what leadership in Seattle and Washington State doesn't seem to get. Why is that? Because they haven't run businesses. They don't get basic economic principles. And here we are. Like we heard that the one guy say, we're probably moving to places that already have income taxes, and that cheesy smile. No, wrong. Starbucks announced it'll open a corporate operations office in Nashville later this year, a move that's prompted renewed calls from Seattle business leaders for the city to rethink its approach to employer taxes. You think so? Katie Wilson literally just said, yeah, it's unfortunate that Seattle has a tax base that makes it disadvantaged to doing business in Seattle relative to adjoining cities, meaning Bellevue. Because that's where everybody's coming. Because Bellevue doesn't have the taxes that Seattle has. Bellevue doesn't have the progressive leadership that's driven it into the ground that is now going to be impacting Bellevue, because on the state level, we've just got a bunch of numbnuts, like the lady who's talking about Thunderdome. I mean, these people honestly think that this is going to make Washington State better. We need everybody to pay their fair share. Well, you're going to end up just having the middle class, those who can leave, will leave. Then you'll have the lower socioeconomic class left. That's all that you're going to have, because everybody else is going to leave and is in the process of leaving. We already had 𝗪𝗥𝗘𝗠𝗜𝗨𝗠. We've had Jeff Bezos. I mean, who else is going to leave? Everybody who can, that isn't tied to business, that isn't tied to whatever. And you know what? I mean, you've got entire families considering leaving, because it doesn't make sense to stay here anymore. Why would you stay here and pay incredibly high, property taxes, top of gas taxes, top of business taxes, income taxes? I mean, this is not a winning proposition. We have options. And it's like this article. Companies have options. Wealthy people have options. And only the folks that, can't move. Talking with somebody this morning on the Premier chat. They're like, man, I got 12 years left. I got 12 years left before my pension. I'm like, cool, that's a long time. They were down in Portland. That's a long, long time. So you've got people that are stuck in these situations that aren't going to be able to get out because they don't have the liquidity. They don't have the finances to just basically say, screw you guys. I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to start over. Don't have that ability. And those people are the ones that are going to be stuck basically funding the tax base of all this just sheer ridiculousness. It's wild watching it happen in real time. And yet the Democrats are so convinced we need the wealthy to pay their fair. They already are. That is what's made Washington successful. You've got a bunch of businesses coming in. Starbucks announced it'll open a corporate operations office in Nashville later this year, move that's prompted renewed calls from Seattle business leaders for the city to rethink and reimagine its approach to employer taxes. Huh, you think? It's astounding. All the Republicans basically go, don't do this. Don't do this. And the Democrats do it. And then they're like, we need to reimagine and rethink what we're doing. Huh. I mean, it's just, it literally, you've got the blind leading the blind here. It's nuts. How about this one? 5 Starbucks stores in Seattle to close, including busy Armory location. 4 out of the 5 are union. And they've basically put themselves out of business. You know what I mean? You got the mayor out there of Seattle out there. My back, my neck, my paycheck is whack. My neck, my back, my paycheck is whack. Something like that. Yeah, just absolutely brain dead. Rah, 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 bunch of nonsense. So Starbucks says, okay, yeah, 4 out of 5, we're done. We're not doing that. Homie, don't play that game. And then Starbucks is like, this is union busting. Yeah, what did you think would happen? They can't afford to run their stores, so they're going to shut them down. Your $26, your $30 an hour, paycheck has gone to zero. How about them apples? According to Starbucks, the 5 stores were set to close in early April. Good. That's what should happen. As stores and restaurants leave downtown Seattle, there's hope. More will return. The problem with the big progressive cities is that they rely upon hope instead of policy. Instead of getting rid of all the crap you don't need, instead of cleaning up the streets, instead of providing solid leadership that makes solid financial decisions, you've just got this hope. Well, I hope businesses come back. Why would they? These businesses are operating under the umbrella of Washington State, which is going to enact a millionaire's tax. You've got terrible policy in Seattle. You've got Seattle run by a bunch of progressives. Why would any of this go in the right direction? You're going to need a lot more than hope to get us there. And that's just not happening. How about this one? This one came February 24th. So this one's within 2 weeks. Amazon. That's Seattle's biggest employer. Now it's not. University of Washington is, because Amazon is moving so many employees out of Seattle because Seattle is just brain dead. Amazon plans to exit an office building near its Seattle quarters 12 years after taking over the space during the height of its growth in the city. It's at 1915 Terry Avenue, 251,000 square feet. Boom. We no longer need to occupy it. Thanks, Seattle, but no thanks. And Seattle's, Amazon's been in the process of moving employees out of Seattle for literally years now. Years. And so much of this has happened since the pandemic. I view the pandemic as kind of the beginning of the end, right? Everybody saw how leadership in state of Washington handled the pandemic. You got to mask up. We're going to shut down all businesses. Talk about no kings. You want to talk about kings running a state? Jay Inslee ran Washington State like a king. If his policies were done by a Republican, it would be absolute all-out war because the libtards would get their email with, oh my gosh, you need to go protest. Right? No kings. No kings. Terrible, terrible. And then you've got this little gem. Office vacancies on the rise in downtown. There you go. And you've got this little gem. Office vacancies on the rise in downtown Seattle. I mean, on the rise. Let's hear this out for 1 second. Just a quick little clip.
Empty storefronts and locked up restaurants. You've probably noticed it yourself while walking around downtown Seattle. New report showed downtown's office vacancy rate is nearly the highest in the entire country. Fox 13's Dan Griffin talked to neighbors, visitors, and workers who say they want businesses to come back and stay there.
Finding a sign on a business.
Here's what we want. Here's what we hope. But, you're staring down the barrel, highest vacancy factor in the country. And what you've got going for you is hope, we would want more businesses to be here. You got to back it up with some solid policy. We're not there yet. We're not even close. We're going the wrong way. Pendulum swing is downward. So, for me, for you, glass is half full, because we got podcasts for days, weeks, months, years. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit that notification bell. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks again for joining. Bye for now.